All right, today we're jumping into the story of one of the most controversial, influential, and just downright complicated figures in modern music, Adidja Palmer, the man the world knows as Vybz Kartel. He's a cultural icon who built an empire, a convicted murderer who somehow reigned over dancehall from a prison cell, and now he's a free man with a story that is far from over. Okay, just think about that for a second. To understand how a global music superstar ends up with that kind of deep psychological scar, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning of his reign. So before all the legal drama, before the conviction, Vybz Kartel wasn't just another artist. He was a legit cultural phenomenon. In Jamaica, they didn't just call him a star, they called him the world boss. And his influence was just immense. It went so far beyond Jamaica. You've got superstars like Drake pointing to him as one of their biggest inspirations. I mean, that just shows you how much power radiated globally from this one artist on a small island. And what's really wild is how he could single-handedly shift trends. Before Kartel, a lot of Jamaican youth fashion was looking over at American hip-hop for cues. But after him, it was all about what the world boss was wearing. He made Clark's desert boots a sensation with just one song. And this is where you really see the empire he built. It was so much bigger than just the recording studio. He was a businessman, right? Launching his own rum, condoms, even a controversial skin-lightening soap. He was a media personality with his own reality TV show. And in his music, man, he shattered long-held taboos, changing the entire lyrical landscape of dancehall forever.
But you know how these stories sometimes go. Right at the absolute height of all that power, Kartel's entire world came crashing down. So the whole thing became this massive media sensation. It started in 2011 when his associate, Clive "Lizard" Williams, just vanished. Kartel was arrested, and what followed was one of the longest, most watched trials in Jamaican history, which ended with a guilty verdict and a life sentence.
And this was the smoking gun for the prosecution's case. A really damning text message allegedly sent from Kartel's phone. It basically reads like a direct confession to the murder of Lizard Williams, whose body, by the way, has never been found.
So the verdict comes down: life in prison. He has to serve at least 35 years before even being eligible for parole. Now, for pretty much any other artist on the planet, that would have been it. Story over. But this is Vybz Kartel we're talking about. For him, prison wasn't the end. No way. Incredibly, it was just the start of a whole new, unprecedented chapter. Get this, while he was locked up, Kartel was somehow impossibly prolific. Just look at this number. Over 50 songs released in 2016 alone. Alone, from a prison cell. He wasn't just staying relevant, he was still dominating the entire genre. And we're not talking about some throwaway tracks either. His prison-era work was some of his most successful. His album, King of the Dancehall, hit #2 on the Billboard reggae charts. His single Fever went gold in the US. And just this year, he got a Grammy nomination for an album he made while he was still an inmate. It's just unbelievable. So the big question is, how on earth did he pull this off? Well, according to him, it was all done with smuggled phones and voice memos. He literally turned his prison cell into a makeshift recording booth, a fact that, for what it's worth, Jamaican authorities have always denied knowing anything about. But this bizarre reign from a prison cell, well, it couldn't go on forever. And then, after nearly a decade of appeals, something happened that pretty much nobody saw coming: a stunning reversal. So after his appeal failed in Jamaica, his legal team didn't give up. They took the case all the way to the UK's Privy Council, which is Jamaica's final court of appeal. And in March 2024, they did the unthinkable. They quashed the conviction. A few months after that, Jamaican prosecutors decided not to order a retrial, and Vybz Kartel walked free. Now, this is so important to understand. He didn't get out because they proved his innocence. No, it all came down to a fatal flaw in the original trial. The Privy Council's decision was all about juror misconduct, basically evidence that a juror allegedly tried to bribe others. That tainted the entire process and made the original verdict unsafe. So after 13 years, an entire lifetime in the music industry, Adidja Palmer steps back into a world that's completely different and into a life scarred by all that time inside. And this really gives you a raw look behind that world boss persona. The bravado is gone, and you see the deep psychological trauma that came with being locked up for so long. Just the sound of a key shaking is enough to traumatize him. And it seems like his perspective might be shifting too.
You look at the past, with lyrics that were heavily criticized and his promotion of skin bleaching, and then you look at the present. He's calling the skin bleaching stuff bullshit. He's regretting his old homophobic lyrics and now just says, I think people should live.
So his new reality is, well, it's complicated. He's battling serious health conditions like Graves' disease that got way worse in prison. He's got civil lawsuits to deal with. But at the same time, the world is still recognizing his talent. He's being honored with major awards and was even granted a special US visa for his extraordinary ability.
So in the end, his story is still one of the most compelling and complicated in all of music. A man who was freed, not because he was found innocent, but because of a flawed trial. He leaves this legacy of cultural transformation and huge controversy. So the real question is, what will the world boss do with his second chance?